Okay, welcome to the 6th episode of Story Structure Breakdown, where we've been studying the movie adaptation of the novel 1984. If you missed the fifth episode, just click the link in the description box below and start watching there. Okay, so the story is starting to pick up quite a bit from when we started it initially. At first, the plot questions were few and far between, and they were uninteresting as well. And that's when we started adding our own plot question, remember? Just who is this woman anyway? Now today I'd like to talk about the power of repetition to create drama in your story. The last episode ended with the mysterious woman who has been following Winston Smith finally making contact and passing a note. So here we see her in the doorway during the air raid, and now we see her at the bar. And now for the third time she's at the antique dealer's. So we've seen her a series of 3 times before something actually happens. So this gives this moment significantly more dramatic effect than if we had just seen her once or even twice. And so here we have it, our first major plot question of the story. She's in love with him, so we wonder what happens next. Now you may think that this is just a random number of appearances, but it's not. The number 3 is probably the most common number you'll see used in dramatic structure. You've got Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, you've got the 3 Wise Men, you've got the 3 Stooges. This is because the number 3 is the perfect amount of repetitions to create tension and suspense for dramatic setup. This can also be used to create a comic effect, and we frequently see this structure used in comedy. For example, a priest, a minister, and a rabbi are talking in a bar, and to prove that preaching to people really isn't all that hard, they make a bet to see who can convert a grizzly bear. A few days later, they got together to see who had won. The priest had his arm in a sling, is on crutches, and has various bandages, and says, "When I found a bear in the woods, I began to read to him from the catechism. But that bear wanted nothing to do with me and began to slap me around. So I quickly grabbed my holy water, sprinkled him, and he became as gentle as a lamb." The minister, who was in a wheelchair with an arm and both legs in casts and an IV drip, spoke next. "After I gave that bear my best fire and brimstone sermon about heaven and hell, I put the fear of God in him so badly that he became as gentle as a lamb. We spent the rest of the day singing Amazing Grace." Then the rabbi, who was even worse off than the first 2 and lying in a hospital bed with a body cast and traction with IVs and monitors running in and out of him, looks up and says, "Looking back on it, circumcision might have not have been the best way to start." Once you're aware of this structure, you'll start seeing it all over the place. It happens not only in plots, but in the numbers of characters in the story. If there is one main character, he'll interact with 2 secondary characters. Shakespeare uses this device all the time. This is because, as the saying goes, 2's company and 3's a crowd. 2 people can usually get along with each other, but if you add a 3rd, this is when you introduce conflict, which is essential to drama. Adam and Eve were pretty happy before the snake got there, don't you think? So the reason I wanted to talk to you about this today is due to timing, which affects the pacing and ultimately how interesting your story is. If I set up the joke before by telling you about the priest and then the minister, one right after the other, in order for the joke to be successful, I must tell the punchline in a timely fashion. Now, if I waited an hour or 2 to tell you the punchline, the joke would have no dramatic effect. The same is true with the structure of your story. Now, I introduced the plot question of the mysterious woman in one of the previous episodes because I wanted to hold your attention as well as learn something about dramatic structure. Then I showed her again in the episode that followed the first one. But now, all of a sudden, the actual story is gaining momentum. So that's it's starting to look like we won't need to alter the structure to be more interesting. I could wait until later in the story to show you the mysterious woman again, but like waiting a few hours to tell you the punchline of the joke, that would ruin any dramatic effect it would have had. So instead, I'll just add her next appearance here so it doesn't interfere with the rest of the movie.
Hoping she will make a man of him, he seeks sanctuary in the home of Magda, a middle-aged waitress with a penchant for sex.
But what does this plot question mean? How does it apply to the story? Well, if I was to continue with building this continuing theme into a dramatic structure, here's what I would have done. But let me first explain the 5 main points of story's structure. You've got the opening, where you set the scene and introduce the characters. Then you've got plot point 1, where something happens and the main character must make a decision or take action to move the plot along. Then you've got the midpoint of the story, where something happens to create further conflict in the story. The main character must again make a decision or take action. Then you've got plot point 2, where something else happens and the main character must act. Finally, you've got the climax of the story, which is the most dramatic of all the events, and where the character must make the biggest decision of the story to take the most dramatic action. So each plot point is like a bridge to the next, and each one builds in conflict and drama off of the last one. So within this structure, I'd introduce the mysterious woman at the end of the opening to let the reader know she exists and create a plot question in their minds. As the main character embarks on the rest of the story in plot point 1, I'd portray the mysterious woman again and give just a little bit more information about her and why she might be important to the story. Then at the midpoint, where the main character is faced with his biggest challenge so far, I'd portray the mysterious woman again. Now, at this point, you could choose to give the reader more information about her, but still leave her in the background of the story, or you could bring her completely into the story and move forward in helping the main character overcome further obstacles. It's completely up to you. So I hope you found that helpful, and if you have any questions, just leave them in the discussion box below. And if you do find these videos helpful, please subscribe to this channel and share them with a friend. Until next time, this is Jim from enoveladvisor.com, your first step to writing a novel and the last word on marketing it.
Visit enoveladvisor.com to publish your own novel. You really can't go wrong. Learn to write a novel and market it. You will find out how easy it is. Turn your dream of writing into reality. eNovel Advisor has everything you need.